When looking at the road today, it seems that everyone drives the exact same car. A midsize, four-door, front-wheel drive sedan available in about 3 different colors. But cars used to not be this way. Not long ago, cars were viewed as an extension of the driver, with some cars being considered works of art. But how did we go from this to this? Why do all cars look alike, and why are they all so boring? In the United States, cars from the 50s, 60s, and early 70s are considered to be classic cars. The reason for this is because during these years, car companies' priorities were completely different than they are now, mostly focusing on if a car was fun to drive, comfortable, and stylish. And when these are your only restrictions when building a car, the cars that get made are gonna be incredible. And for over 20 years, they were. That was until 1973 when more priorities were added to the design process. During this year, government regulations were set in place to help with the smog that was accumulating over major cities. This saw the introduction of the catalytic converter to every car in the US, which resulted in a major drop of power among all cars. However, this wasn't the only change that came in 1973, because that same year, gas prices skyrocketed. So now, not only did car companies have to work around new regulations set in place by the government, but they also had to fill the growing demand for more fuel-efficient cars. This caused quite a bit of confusion on how they were going to do this, with some companies trying to make their sedans more fuel efficient, like Cadillac, who started developing cylinder deactivation technology around this time. But what showed to be the best option was to simply offer more fuel efficient cars on top of the cars they've already made. This worked out pretty good for car companies, because now not only could they still sell cool cars like the Trans Am, but families started buying more than one car per household. One for hauling the family and one to save money on gas. But that mindset wouldn't last long, because in 1989 the Honda Accord got a redesign. And its major change was that now the Accord was bigger, but it was still fuel efficient. This meant that instead of buying 2 cars per family, they could just buy one car that could do both, and that's exactly what they did. So if American car companies were going to survive, they needed to stop selling big sedans and tiny compacts and instead sell one car that could do both their jobs. And by the early 90s, cars that had been around for decades began to get axed by the dozens. And the ones that weren't were getting completely redesigned until they were unrecognizable. And not just by looks either, but powertrain as well. Since the front-wheel drive 4-cylinder arrangement, like what the Accord had, got the best fuel economy, all their cars got the same treatment. Did you love your Monte Carlo or Impala with a V8 and rear-wheel drive? Well, now that's no longer an option. But the powertrain wasn't the only thing that changed during these redesigns, but the appearance as well. Because better aerodynamics meant better fuel economy, all cars needed to be more aerodynamic. And since the laws of physics don't change for different car companies, this is when all cars started to look alike. And it wasn't very pretty either, often getting referred to as bubble cars or melted cheese. One thing that was for certain was that this style and powertrain was here to stay. Remember the Ford Probe? That front-wheel drive aerodynamic car was originally going to be the Mustang. But luckily, Ford actually listened to their fans and decided to keep the Mustang a V8 rear-wheel drive. This example Ford made to keep the Mustang as original as possible while modernizing the rest of the lineup would get copied by Chevy and eventually Dodge, and it's a good thing they did too, or else cars could have been a lot worse today. But besides the exception of these halo cars, every car on the road was a front-wheel drive 4-cylinder bubble car. And this was made official in 2007 when Ford discontinued the Crown Vic, the last of the V8 rear-wheel drive commuter cars that people had loved so much. And not much has changed here in 2023, with most cars on the road still being this same style. But where does it go from here, and is there any hope for the future? Well, as of now, it's looking like here pretty soon these cars are going to be phased out, and what's replacing them is even worse. Back in 2021, Ford announced that they will no longer be making cars in favor of more crossover SUVs. And with the talk of electrification becoming the new standard, it's entirely possible that in a few years, electric crossover SUVs are all you're going to see on our highways. But the question that still remains, will the halo cars be getting the same makeover? And I don't know the answer to that. While it's true that cars like the Mustang Mach-E are constantly getting shoved down our throats, I like to think that Halo cars are going to survive this round of modernization just like they did in the early 90s. But one thing that's for certain is that the future is not, and only time will tell. Hey, thanks for watching guys, subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you next time.